later in the show. But let's start with the NFL award show. Did you have a biggest surprise coming out of last night?
There weren't that many surprises, I don't think. I guess the comeback player of the year one is probably the most surprising, or the fact that Lamar Jackson's MVP was one vote away from being unanimous. I mean, I think we all expected him to be MVP. For it to be 49-1 felt a little,
too dominant, you would say.
Yeah, like
the one vote.
The thing that defined this year was that there was no,
Right.
obvious unanimous consensus MVP for basically the entirety of the year. And then the 49ers game happened and everyone went, all right, Lamar did it, MVP.
Right.
At least everyone, 49 of the 50 people, of whom I am one.
You're one of the 50.
I am.
You are. I saw the list. It's a decent list overall, plus Emmanuel Acho. I mean, it's not. It's what? It's a good list of people, and you are one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. It wasn't. It was weird because the MVP race was completely wide open,
Right.
and then turned into one of the most lopsided votes in history. And I'm not saying Lamar didn't deserve it or anything. I think he did.
Yeah.
And it was fine, but I don't think it should have been as dominant. I thought that there would be more first place votes. It became very narrative driven toward the end because Lamar peaked at the end in the Dolphins game, particularly that 49ers game on Christmas night.
Like Brock Purdy was a few weeks away from being, the consensus MVP, and he got 0 first place votes. He only got 9 second place votes. Like his candidacy was destroyed the day that Lamar's was built.
I think there's the comeback player of the year award. My initial takeaway on that, Joe Flacco getting it over DeMar Hamlin, and probably the Lamar stuff.
With 8 fewer first place votes.
Yes, we'll talk about why that is. I mean, we joke on here about how even keel we are, and we try to bring some level-headed analysis here.
Yeah, people hate that.
People can't stand that.
Right.
But I think that nothing sums up the recency bias stuff than the comeback player of the year award, and maybe Lamar Jackson having 49 votes. By the way, congrats to Lamar Jackson. Incredible.
Absolutely.
Second MVP.
Two-time MVP.
Youngest player to have an MVP.
And to be clear, as one of the 49 people that voted for him, I do agree that he should be the MVP.
Yeah, I'm just
surprised that it was 49.
I agree with you. But the one person who voted against is getting some hate. It's Aaron Schatz, formerly of Football Outsiders, now of FTN. Fade the noise, I believe. Schatz is defended himself. Why did he have Josh Allen first and Dak Prescott second, I believe? And it's like, dude, I thought more people would have that take. I stand with Aaron, at least having not necessarily the exact take, but I thought more people would go down that path.
Aaron was one of those people who wrote up his awards and his AP, basically his ballot, right, for the All-Pro and for his awards. Wrote the whole thing up in an article, explained his logic in each and every pick. And I don't mean yesterday. I mean, he did this, weeks ago when he put in the ballot. And, there's people out there going, this is just a contrarian pick to drive people to your website, to clicks. Like, the man wrote it up weeks ago, right? He didn't know it was going to be controversial at the time he wrote it up. I didn't think it was going to be 49-1.
You're not, the 50 voters don't get together and, raise their hand. It's all secret ballot.
I would say, look, if you want to dignify the guy with reading his explanation. If you think he's still full of it, fine. That's your prerogative. I think he's wrong. I voted for the other guy. But he's not doing that just to drive clicks to his website. Like, he wrote this up weeks ago. If you want to go read his explanation, go read his explanation, but it's his opinion, and I don't think it's a crazy one.
So congrats to Lamar Jackson on the MVP. I think that was well-deserved, well-earned. We're just, breaking down the breakdown of the votes. I want to talk about comeback player of the year and what happened there, but first is 2024 bringing exciting or unexpected changes to your life. Here's a secret weapon to help you face those challenges with more confidence. It's a great term life insurance policy. That's right. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to protect your family's financial future, so you can focus on what's ahead, knowing your family is protected if something else unexpected happens. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to coverage in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect your family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Policy is issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. By the way, as I did the other day when Dan Marino walked by, I will point out if I see somebody really important or fun or whatever it might be.
Like Greg Olson right there.
We just talked to Greg Olson.
We did.
We gave him kudos. We said, "Good job, Greg. You do a great job on the broadcast." And he said, "Hey, thanks for all you do."
Yeah.
To Sam and Steve.
He did.
So
Greg thinks we do a good job too.
It was yeah. And one of the guys with him was like, "Hey, big fan of the show."
Absolutely.
He's probably listening right now. So no, it was great. Running into people over here. So Comeback Player of the Year award.
Yeah.
I thought it was a lot. I thought this was like the easiest award ever. Damar Hamlin came back from death, had the most first place votes, but did not win the award in favor of Joe Flacco.
It's interesting. So usually the AP has only been doing this for a couple of years, where they've awarded a point system, right? You have first place, second place, third place. You get different points for each one. So it isn't just who got more first place votes. That's the way it used to be done. Now it's who got the most points when you add in essentially a ranked choice system. I think generally speaking, that is an improvement and a good way of doing it. Eventually, We're going to get an MVP, much like this, who wins MVP with fewer first place votes than the guy that didn't win MVP, and that's going to cause all kinds of chaos. I do think, however, that in this very, very specific instance, the ranked choice system probably ends up producing a bad result. Now, it was very close. Joe Flacco has 151 points, Damar Hamlin has 140, but 8 more people thought that Damar Hamlin was the comeback player of the year than Joe Flacco, but because of the nature of his comeback, right? And, comeback player of the year is a very, nebulous, difficult to define award, which is the whole
least favorite award, Sam.
Right, I know, and a lot of people's, which is why it's very difficult to define and articulate and all those kinds of things. But basically, people with Damar Hamlin fell into one of two camps. Either they were like, well, he's clearly the comeback player of the year, the same way Alex Smith was when he came back from almost having his leg amputated. It didn't matter how much he played. It didn't matter whether he played well. Simply stepping back on an NFL field after what he went through makes him comeback player of the year. You either fell into that camp, which you and I are both in, or you fell into the camp of saying, he wasn't even good and he didn't play when he came back. Therefore, how can he be comeback player of the year? We need to give it to a guy that played and played well. Now, so anyone in that camp basically didn't even have Hamlin on the ballot, right? They're like, he's not comeback player of the year at all. I'm going Baker Mayfield 1, Joe Flacco 2, Tua Tagovailoa 3, whatever. So I think a ranked choice system hurts Damar Hamlin's case in an unusual way that is usually not applicable.
You're right. You're either all in or all out.
Right.
When it comes to Damar Hamlin.
Now, that being said, I do think it's vaguely funny that 7 people of the voters had him second. 7 people processed this and said, that's a really impressive comeback. The man died on the field. We didn't know if he was going to have brain damage for several days afterwards. We certainly didn't think he was going to play again. He got all the way back. He played in an NFL game. He played, whatever it was, 15, 20 snaps over the regular season, more in the playoffs. Really impressive comeback, but it's not quite as impressive as just an old man coming off the couch and playing mid-ball for 6 games. 7 people came to that conclusion. 14 people came to the conclusion that it's really impressive, but it's less impressive than old man Flacco over 6 games and one other dude, like Stafford coming back from being hurt for a while. I don't understand that as a process. Those people have some questions for.
I completely agree with you on the all or nothing aspect of this affecting Hamlin and the award. I think this is a good time for me to rail against the recency bias of the human brain and the current news cycle that we live in here. What if, hypothetically, Damar Hamlin had the on-field incident in, say, I don't know, November, and was able to come back by the end of December, right, within the same season? Would that change your vote? He came back from death. Now, the fact that he did it in 2 months versus 7 months, would that have changed things?
I think it's a Flacco-specific thing. I mean, even it's the fact that Flacco's run happened right at the end.
Right at the end.
And went into the playoffs.
It also wins the award probably any other year because he came off the couch and led a playoff team.
But the point being, it's the fact that it happened acutely at the end of the season, right when the votes are going in. That's the recency bias will work, because if you take Flacco out of this, Hamlin beats Baker Mayfield, who had what is just a conventional comeback, right? He was bad last year. He wasn't expected to be a starter. And this year he came in and played well. Baker is the conventional comeback player of the year story. And in a year without Joe Flacco and Damar Hamlin, Baker Mayfield wins comeback player of the year over Matthew Stafford, over Tua and his concussions, over, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, Calvin Ridley, blah, blah, blah. Baker is your conventional comeback player of the year. Damar Hamlin is a, once ever story. So Damar Hamlin trumps the usual comeback player story of Baker Mayfield. And then only Joe Flacco rocking up with like the last month of the season and going on this acute run into the playoffs, jacks the whole thing sideways, and the recency bias makes him comeback player of the year.
It's recency bias in favor of Flacco. It happened late, but also against Hamlin because that happened last year in January.
Right, but I think it's only when both of those happen at the same time is it affects him.
But this is what's driving me crazy, man. Like, do people forget? Football shut down for a few days.
Yeah.
We didn't even know if there was going to be games. The whole playoff structure got changed. They canceled a game. Like, they canceled the Bills-Bengals game. They didn't restart it.
Which is like the first time ever that happened, right?
Right.
It's the first game that's been abandoned in ever.
We had to do multiple podcasts that week, trying to make sense of things, and we couldn't talk really about anything else, right? Football stopped. The sports world kind of stopped a little bit for a few days to kind of figure out what was going on here. And eventually, you came back and and there was more normalcy after that. But it was just an amazing story every step of the way. People want to know, how's Hamlin doing? And then even just like standing up and taking a first step and waving to people and all these different things. Like, that happened within the last calendar year of when these votes were placed. And we still forgot it because Joe Flacco played 5 games. To me, it's just more a microcosm of how the news cycle in our mind works to like the last thing that we saw.
And also because
not the most impactful thing that we saw.
Because his recovery has been so complete and he's gotten back onto the field and onto an NFL field, something that most people never achieve in the first place, people assume that was always a given, right? At the time, like when it happened, they got him, they got his heart starting again, they got him into the hospital. He was in a coma for like a couple of days.
Right.
When he was in the coma, a lot of medical professionals were saying for the amount of time that he was down, his brain was starved from oxygen. There is a very good chance that he is brain damaged at this point and may not live a normal life at all, let alone come back and play in an NFL game. So we can't like revise history and go, once they got it going again. Like once he undied on the field, it was all smooth sailing from that point on.
He's just a special teamer.
Right. It was all easy from then. Like it was a very real. We did not think that this guy was going to play football again.
To me, it's just a microcosm of the world we're in right now and the way people react. I mean, again, a year ago before the AFC Championship, there was discussion that if Joe Burrow beats Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
Now it's like, Patrick Mahomes leads the Chiefs to 17 points, plays really well, by the way. But because they made it to the next Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time now because this game happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we just can't have a normal. Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl. Put him in the Hall of Fame. There's no other way. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
He's not just a very good quarterback. Like, everything is at the extreme right now.
Yep. There's no normal anymore.
Anyway, it's the most we're ever going to talk about the Comeback Player of the Year award.
Cool.
I hope. Defensive Player of the Year, Sam.
Yeah.
You had a good day yesterday, overall.
Myles Garrett won.
I haven't seen you smile in, forever.
Yeah.
And you were smiling. We had a good lunch yesterday. We had a good lunch. You were happy. And that night, Myles Garrett wins Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Not because you're biased, but because you just,
think
the right guy won.
I do think the right guy won, and I was simply happy that my mentions were not quite the dumpster fire they would have been had TJ Watt won. And, it was interesting. It was close.
Very
Myles
close
Garrett,
vote.
23 first-place votes compared with 19 for TJ Watt, 7 for Micah Parsons, which results in 165 points for Garrett, 140 for TJ Watt, and then 89 for Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, by the way, who came out and said that Myles Garrett was Defensive Player of the Year. Like a guy that other people, largely Steelers fans, have been saying, Micah Parsons has a stronger case for Defensive Player of the Year than Myles Garrett. Like, look at the numbers. Micah Parsons came out and said, that's a stupid take. Garrett was the best defensive player this season. Watch the tape. Don't just look at stats. So, look, Steelers fans have been doing that for months already. It's like, look at the stats. Garrett only had, 1 sack at the end of the season, yada, yada, yada. The players, the AP voters, Micah Parsons, people watching the tape recognize that Myles Garrett was a dominant force, even if he wasn't in the playoff game, and therefore deserved Defensive Player of the Year.
My quick summation on that is, because we've been defending this for a while. Yeah. It's not that we're not downplaying the importance of the sack on for the defense.
Correct.
Sacks are awesome. The 2 points I want to make is there's other ways to create production in the NFL than any traditional stat that keeps being posted out there. There are other ways besides tackles, sacks, tackles for losses, passes defensed, or whatever else is being thrown out there. There's other ways to provide production, and then yes, the sack is very important, and usually when you win very quickly, you're either going to get those sacks or maybe someone else on your team is, or it's going to force an incompletion or an interception. All that stuff matters. All you can do is isolate what the player brings to the table, and I agree, Myles Garrett deserves Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, and the final point I'll make about this is it is not disrespect or hate to suggest that a man was in the top 5 best defensive players in the NFL in a given season.
It's not disrespect.
Right. So nobody is saying TJ Watt
feels
sucked.
disrespected. He's upset.
Right. TJ feels upset. Nobody is saying he had a bad year. Nobody is saying he wasn't good. Nobody's saying he wasn't great. We're simply saying he was not Defensive Player of the Year. As, by the way, were the players. As, by the way, has Micah Parsons said. It is fact now.
I think TJ Watt is great. He is an awesome player.
Correct.
I think the voters got it right, though.
Yeah.
Other interesting stories coming out of the voting. C.J. Stroud, AP Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Also almost unanimous.
And teammate Will Anderson, AP Defensive Rookie of the Year, the number 2 and 3 pick of the NFL draft.
That one was closer.
People are looking for apologies from me.
Yep, they are.
And you, in a moment of weakness, while we were at dinner last night, saying, maybe it's justified. The Will Anderson trade is justified.
Yep.
And I can't believe you said that.
I apologize.
Based off a Defensive Rookie of the Year award, just because he got awarded things. Like, nothing's changed since the season. We saw Will Anderson play. He was awesome. At the time, we said Will Anderson probably going to be awesome. Big fan of Will Anderson, one of my favorite players in the draft. So, I don't know. My take hasn't changed. But you apparently have changed because he has an award now and you think trade justified.
Yeah, I do. I do think trade has been justified. I think they got it right. You can ultimately, because we don't know what any of these players are going to be, right? There is an unknown element to all of this, which is what are you going to get with the picks, and that's why we focus on process over results, because you never are entirely sure. And the chances are, as we were saying, our argument was the chances are there's no way that these players can be good enough to justify the picks that they gave up, because you're talking more players and they're high value, and if you sort of plot out the averages and the probabilities, they're better off staying with the picks that they had and sacrificing Will Anderson Jr. But C.J. Stroud has been Offensive Rookie of the Year and looked like one of the best quarterback prospects to enter the league ever in terms of his immediate performance.
He's not a part of the trade-up discussion, though.
Will Anderson has won Defensive Rookie of the Year and looks like an extremely good defensive player. So now what you're looking at, and so the third element of that is the pick that they gave up, or now one of the picks that they've given up, because they were so damn good right out of the gate, is what, 26 overall?
Yep.
So they are going to have given up 26 overall, 33 last year to make that move. I'm okay with that. 26 plus 33 equals Will Anderson. I believe that now has been proven to be a fair trade. Therefore, I apologize for saying that the Texans were bad, stupid, and shouldn't have done it. They got it right.
That's very nice of you. You
the
really
process,
are in a good mood.
The ends justify the means, and the ends were proven correct at this point. I still think it was iffy process, but if you're going to have, look, sometimes you're going to put we're in Vegas. Sometimes you're going to place a bet that does not have a high chance of coming off. If it comes off, fair play, tip of the cap, fair fucks to you. Fair fucks to the Texans.
I'm still kind of in wait-and-see mode. Not that you're not happy as a Texans fan. I will also say, with the history of trading up for non-quarterbacks not being great, if you're going to trade up for a 99th percentile model player, 98th percentile model player like Will Anderson, I do believe your hit rate's going to be higher, and I think that is a good play. So yeah, I always said Will Anderson's going to be an excellent player, but I don't think you feel as great as the Texans were this year, getting things back on track and winning the division, winning a playoff game. I don't think you feel the effects of this trade until maybe a year or two from now. Because, we did a mock draft yesterday from the Cabana over at Circa. And they have a pick at 25 where they can get a starting caliber player.
25 or 26?
20, whatever it is, in the 20s. They have a pick where they can get a starting caliber player. Sorry.
27?
27.
Even better. I apologize even
So
more.
there's still a play, right? You're still going into the draft right now without a first rounder. The pick 32 was it 32? You're missing out on a player like a Joey Porter Jr. and you're missing out on another third round player. We're not going to say it's always going to be the best player. That's a less of a
no,
hit
they
rate.
flipped. They got a third back in it, so the third I think evens itself out.
We'll say it evens itself. So it's still like a Joey Porter Jr. and a player at 12, right? And this year's first round.
So it ends up being.
They would have gone somebody at 12.
Right.
They
so it
would
ends
have
up
gone
being
somebody early second round. Am I right on that?
It ends up being 27 and 33 and Will Anderson for 12, the other player they could have gotten instead.
So
it's Will Anderson.
Right. So it's whoever they could have gotten at 12.
Yeah.
And the next guys off the board: Jahmyr Gibbs, Lucas Van Ness, Broderick Jones, Will McDonald.
It's the other player,
player
plus 27 and 33, or Will Anderson.
Correct. And who could those players have been? I said Joey Porter Jr. He's off the board. It could have been the next guy, non-quarterback, off the board was Sam Laporta, right? And so this is what I'm talking about when doing the math. Would Houston rather have, let's just do the exact picks. Pick 12 was the Lions picks. You could have Jahmyr Gibbs,
right?
Sam Laporta, and the 27th pick in this year's draft.
But you can't do who they have had.
I'm giving examples.
Yeah.
This is who they could have drafted.
Yeah, but you can't do it that way because that's always going to produce an optimal. Like that's the 100th percentile range of outcome.
No, those are literally just the next players off the board.
Yeah, but that's.
They also could have had a worse scenario. They could have had Will McDonald, right, who went a few picks later.
How dare you?
They could have had Matthew Bergeron and the 27th pick, right? So it could have gone poorly.
Yeah.
But again, like the math behind this is still like a 3-for-1, basically.
I mean,
and even if Will Anderson's great, which I think his trajectory.
Jahmyr Gibbs was the actual
good.
pick. The very next pick was Lucas Van Ness. Like it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah,
so you can't look at it as like here's who they could have
been
had.
Lucas Van Ness, Jonathan Mingo, and the 27th pick this year.
Right. So it's a range of outcomes. So that's the whole point. It's always a gamble. So the fact that they got the gamble correctly, that they nailed their pick, they got Will Anderson, is worth something.
Yeah,
and I believe it's worth.
I'm not even being critical of it right now. I'm just saying like there's still wait and see aspects to it because it affects your team building going forward. It affects your depth going forward to put all your eggs into one player basket.
Yeah, but that one player appears to be very good.
I agree. I thought so at the time that he was very good. So congrats to the Texans is the bottom line here. C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson.
Fair fucks to them.
Let's talk a little prize picks. We got a lineup for this weekend.
How many of those can I drop before this thing has to be demonetized?
I think you're done. Patrick Mahomes, we're going more than a half passing yard. We got a special freebie with Patrick Mahomes, theoretically, as long as he doesn't throw for negative passing yards here. Brandon Ayuk, part of our PFF prize picks lineup. Brandon Ayuk going more than 62.5 receiving yards. Isaiah Pacheco going more than a half rushing and receiving touchdown. We have Patrick Mahomes plus Brock Purdy going more than 38.5 rushing yards combined. Chris Jones going more than a quarter of a sack, so we need a half sack or more. And then Christian McCaffrey going more than 90.5 rushing yards this weekend in the big game. So that's our prize picks lineup for this week. You guys can also play along over at Prize Picks, and it's a good time to do it because if I could find it over here, I'm going the wrong way. It's the wrong way, and wish we had these in order. Because we got the Patrick Mahomes free square that I already told you about. If Mahomes throws for one or more yard, you win. An extra layer of excitement is added to the big game with Prize Picks, and you take advantage of that exclusive Patrick Mahomes free square offer. If Patrick Mahomes throws for more than 1 yard during the Super Bowl, you win. You can win a prize by rooting for one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Don't miss your chance to get in on the action and win big with Prize Picks. Sign up now, claim that free square. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest, most exciting way to play DFS is just you against the numbers. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than a 2 to 6 player stat projection. Watch the winnings roll in. You play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can do that. Just find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, you have a player that exits the game in the first half, doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL. You get a first deposit match up to $100. Great week to do this. prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. $6. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Over at Prize Picks. All right, man, anything else from an awards perspective from last night? Coach of the Year?
Yeah, PFF Bobby did not win Assistant Coach of the Year. He was 4th in the ranking. Jim Schwartz was the fairly runaway number 1 guy. Mike McDonald number 2. Ben Johnson number 3. PFF Bobby number 4.
Browns and Texans mopping up
the
awards.
And then Stefanski, right, won overall Coach of the Year by a tiebreaker. So
they both had Kevin Stefanski and D'Amico Ryans both had 165 total points.
Right. And so Stefanski won because one more voter voted Stefanski first place over D'Amico Ryans. So a tiebreak in overall points went with the guy with the most first place votes. Stefanski number 1, D'Amico Ryans number 2, Dan Campbell number 3, Kyle Shanahan number 4, John Harbaugh number 5. No sign whatsoever of Matt LaFleur.
You were a big LaFleur fan, right?
LaFleur had 2 third-place votes.
Was he your third?
He was in my list somewhere. I forgot.
I remember talking about him with you when you were going over your list. I mean, LaFleur, most of the time this is a did you exceed expectations type of award. And Stefanski, when you have, I know they had 5 starting quarterbacks technically. They were already clinched, right? It was at 5. But basically with 4 starting quarterbacks, they made the playoffs, won double-digit games. So that's why Stefanski won. That's why Jim Schwartz won as coordinator of the year, turned that Browns defense around from very bad to very good. I'm surprised Dan Campbell only got 33 points compared to the 165 that tied for the lead between Stefanski and D'Amico Ryans. I thought Dan Campbell would get a lot more love for the division win, but they had 9 wins last year, so with expectations higher.
So that's the thing. You have to bear in mind these awards are done as soon as the regular season is wrapped, right? Nothing in the playoffs. Everything in the playoffs happens after these awards are voted for, right? So Dan Campbell, the Lions were expected to be good this year. They were good. They won the division, but the legacy got burnished a bit by getting to the NFC Championship game, taking it to the 49ers, almost beating them, and then coming up just short. That, I think, is sort of what makes you think, Dan Campbell probably should have got more love. But if you just look at the regular season, it was more of an as-expected, par for the course.
So that's it on the awards. Honors
Offensive
last
Player
night.
of the Year, right?
You want to talk about it?
I mean, just might as well wrap them up with all of them, right?
All right, AP Offensive Player of the Year. Where is that?
It was Christian McCaffrey fairly comfortably over Tyreek Hill. Those are the 2.
I didn't think it would be that comfortable.
No, I mean, those are the 2 obvious candidates, but I went the other order, but I think either one is fair.
Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, then Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. Again, another interesting award. You're taking value out of it. You're just, it's less of a QB award and more about let's get other positions in there. McCaffrey, definitely well deserved with his as a runner and receiver and what he does for that 49ers offense.